The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your financial advisor. It's easy to put off planning for long-term care, but failing to do so can take a serious toll on your finances in retirement. Whether it's in-home assistance, adult day programs, or a nursing home facility, the reality is most retirees underestimate how much care might cost. According to a report from Genworth from 2023 to 2024, the median annual cost for a private nursing home room rose from more than $116,000 to nearly $128,000. Without a plan, even a few years of care can quickly drain savings meant to cover living expenses or to take care of a surviving spouse. So, with November being National Long-Term Care Awareness Month, what exactly is long-term care planning, and what's the real cost of not having one? Joining me today is Phil Gallant, Managing Partner of the Optimus Group. What does long-term care planning entail exactly, and who's it for?
So long-term care planning is really for everybody, especially today. Long-term care is defined in the tax code under the chronic illness definition in section 7702. And Congress decided to codify that because they wanted to be clear about what long-term care actually is, since they added some tax incentives in the past for people who purchased long-term care insurance. And it's the first things that happen when you wake up in the morning. So assuming you get out of bed, okay, and you maintain continence, that's one ADL, this is the activities of daily living. Then you get out of bed, that's called transferring from a bed to a chair, or just being able to get out of bed. And then toileting, and then it's basically your morning routine, bathing, dressing, and eating. When you need human assistance with two of those, that qualifies you as being chronically ill under the tax code, and that's the definition that most companies follow. In fact, all companies, as I'm aware of, to determine whether or not you're eligible for benefits. You can also be eligible for long-term care if you are a danger to be alone, either because you've got Alzheimer's or some kind of medical incident that you can't feed yourself. You need verbal cueing to do the activities of daily living. Then obviously you're qualified as needing long-term care. So when I say everybody, obviously this could happen to everybody. I bought my first policy when I was 43, and I still have it in force, and I hope I never need it. But that policy allows anyone to care for me, including my wife, and pays me $9,000 a month tax-free if that happens.
So is long-term care planning, is it just looking at life insurance or deciding, okay, am I going to go into an assisted living facility or be taken care of by a loved one? How do you start long-term care planning? What's the first step that you should take?
Well, there are three reasons maybe to plan for long-term care. The first one, and the most common one that people will tell me when they want to put a plan together, is they don't want to be a burden to their children. So when you're a caregiver, it generally disrupts your work life. It can be financially draining. And a lot of folks that buy long-term care policies or long-term care protection are really protecting their family members and loved ones, both emotionally and financially, if should they need care. So in my case, I wouldn't want my daughters to have to take time off to come care for me, and I certainly would prefer to not be in a nursing home. So having a stream of income that I can use to pay for my care allows me and my family members, whoever's helping put the care plan together, knowing what our budget is, can help us pick maybe independent living coupled with home care. Maybe it's adult daycare, someone coming to my home while I'm away at work to care for my mom or my dad or my spouse. Maybe it's assisted living care where you need some level of care, but you're still mentally just fine. And finally, there's long term care. So it's a family product. And when you say life insurance, um, standalone long term care policies, which would have just paid if you triggered the long term care benefit, um, are have really kind of gone away. There's only a handful of companies anymore that offer the old standalone policies today, uh, and it was one of the biggest objections and concerns that people had to buying those policies was I'm going to pay the most expensive insurance premium I've ever paid for a policy I hope I never need. And if you went through your life and paid thousands of dollars for a long-term care policy and never went to a nursing home, never needed care, that money is gone. Today, the insurance industry has been very creative and created long-term care benefits that are attached to life insurance policies and to annuities, so that if you never use the benefits of the plan, somebody is getting money because you made that decision.
When do you think people should start thinking about that plan, and how do you approach that conversation with your clients?
Well, because of the reaction that the industry has had to the old standalone policies, I'm a huge believer that life insurance is one of the most valuable financial tools that any family can have. Unfortunately, our industry hasn't done a good job educating people on the living benefits that life insurance and some annuities, but generally life insurance offers. And what I mean by that is if I have a young family, couple in their 30s or even their 40s, that needs life insurance, I am not going to sell them a life insurance policy that doesn't already include a chronic illness rider for long-term care. And generally, you can buy those with no additional charge. Some companies do charge for a long-term care rider, but many companies now automatically include a chronic illness benefit on their life insurance policies. So I think it's something that when you're doing other planning, it can be something that's just added, sort of automatically to your plan. Unfortunately, the people that are most motivated to buy long-term care insurance are people who they can see a problem coming, either from a health standpoint or some issue, maybe a family history. And once you're already chronically ill, you can't buy the insurance. So it's something to do on a preventative basis. But because of the fact that you don't lose money anymore by buying it on a life insurance chassis, I think advisors are doing a disservice to their clients if they're not encouraging them to own life insurance in the first place, but when they do, to make sure they buy policies that have a chronic illness rider. And what that allows you to do is use the death benefit while you're alive, tax-free, to pay for chronic care.
How can families balance planning for long-term care with other financial priorities, maybe like trying to save for retirement or paying off debt?
Once again, I go back to the life insurance analogy. I mean, when people are educated properly on how to use really what's a magnificent financial tool, life insurance designed by a professional that knows what they're doing. And what I mean by that is policies can be designed in the client's favor in the sense that they can, insurance agents by lowering compensation that they get paid on index universal life, for example, can design a policy that will have a lot more cash value in it, living value in it. But the death benefit is what you advance in the event that you need long-term care. So I don't think it's separate from proper planning to begin with. If you're doing proper planning, any young family has to have life insurance. And when they're educated, they want permanent insurance that's properly designed. And I think the advisor is, in my view, and required to, write policies that already include it as part of an overall retirement strategy.
Do you have any advice maybe on how to involve adult children into that plan?
Well, adult children are always going to say that they're going to take care of you. That's the number one reaction. And generally, they're trying to protect mom and dad from spending money on something they may never need. But once it's an educational process. If you have a conversation with your children and say, "Listen, we're going to allocate some of our money to a protection strategy that will pay for chronic care should we ever need it, and we don't expect you to pay for our care, and we don't expect you to necessarily be our caregivers, but if you were, we've put something in place that could pay you to do that." And it's literally that simple. Once you trigger the benefits with most long-term care policies, they pay you a tax-free monthly income that you can use to pay anyone you want to care for them. And I've had both of my parents went through shorter-term care situations. We lost my dad 20 some odd years ago now, and he needed to be cared for by my mom. And then my mom passed away 5 years ago, and she needed care in her home. And my wife and I drove 3 hours every weekend to go provide that. And we actually took care of my wife's dad, who lived with us for a year. None of them had long-term care because when they were of the age to buy it, it wasn't available. But had they had it, it certainly would have made our lives a lot easier because we had to take time off from work, and it was a lot of juggling, and we had to bring in additional caregivers that they had to pay for out of pocket. So I think it's part of an overall planning strategy that really everybody should be looking at.
With November being National Long-Term Care Awareness Month, for people who maybe don't know where to start or thinking about getting life insurance or some sort of long-term care plan in place, what is your piece of advice for them? Maybe what are some mistakes that you've seen in the industry that they can avoid?
Well, obviously they should start with their own financial advisor. And the number one question should be, what do you know about long-term care? Because many investment advisors don't really focus on insurance. They're focused on managing your portfolio. And if they say not much, say, do you have a specialist? Because there are lots of people who specialize in it. Or do you have life policies that offer long-term care coverage as a part of the policy, or can I add it for a fee? And what information do you have on that? And really what you want to look at is what benefits would be paid to you and how are they taxed? And generally, when you're combining it with either an annuity or a life insurance application, let's say you're buying a $500,000 life insurance policy, generally policy will pay, should you need long-term care, the majority of that death benefit while you're alive, tax-free, to pay for your care. So I think you need to interview your advisor. The definition of care is very, very simple. Do you need help with 2 out of 6 activities of daily living or not? And I just add as an aside, a lot of these same policies that have a chronic illness rider will often include something called a critical illness rider, which would do the same thing, pay a lump sum if you're diagnosed with a disease like cancer or heart attack or a stroke, where you still might be able to perform your ADLs, but you're out of work. And your disability insurance is maybe going to replace your income. But if you have to bring a caregiver in, policies that have that rider, like my dad, who died of esophageal cancer, and my mom had to take care of him, but he still could bathe and dress and do all the things under the chronic illness definition, but they would have received a pretty hefty payout because he was diagnosed with cancer. So you can combine really high level health insurance, if I can use that term, to stack on top of what you already have that pays you and not the hospital or the nursing home or the provider. Pays you, and then you can hire your own help. So, I think it's certainly a family decision, but it's also a financial planning decision that should be pretty simple to make. You look up the definition online, what's the definition of long-term care, and make sure that whatever you buy follows that definition.
What's the financial cost of not having any sort of long-term care plan in place? Well,
it's really about choice when you need care. So the financial impact, depending on what part of the country you live in, the worst case scenario is a nursing home. And here in my part of the country, upstate New York, you're looking at $150,000 a year for a nursing home, full-blown nursing home care. Long-term care insurance is really the number one thing that's going to help you avoid a nursing home, because it will pay for, when you trigger the benefit, it will pay if you need care in an assisted living facility, if you want care at home, in an adult daycare setting, or a combination of those. So shopping for flexibility is really, really key. How is the policy going to pay you, and how can you use that money? So most of the plans today are paying you a tax-free income monthly, and you can be very, very flexible in terms of how you design your care plan.
All right, that does it for this edition of Not Your Father's 2 Cents. Sources used in this episode will be linked in the description. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you back here next time.